Hello and welcome to my first unhaul of the new year. Huzzah, it's a new year, so a new shelf purge. Not literally, this is just because my unhaul stack had been piling up for a minute and was kind of overdue, but I just got distracted. So I'm planning to unhaul several large stacks of books. I will be discussing them in brief, but yeah, mostly you can just assume that I didn't really enjoy any of these and that's why I'm getting rid of them. I do take my unhauls to little free libraries when I'm done and kind of hopefully exchange a few books, but mostly just drop off anything I don't want and hope that someone else gets some enjoyment out of it where I did not. I didn't count it, but I do have like large stacks over here, like 3 decent sized stacks, so I'm just gonna get into it. This haul basically comprises my entire December wrap up, as well as like a couple of prior months and then some random books that I brought over from my parents' book collection that I later changed my mind and decided I didn't want. So for the first stack of, I think, mostly recent reads, David Sedaris' Holidays on Ice. I'm a little bit on David Sedaris usually, but this is the first time I read one of his books and actively disliked it. Like, this was an atrocious, unpleasant read. I don't get it. He writes nonfiction essays, humorous, usually about his life and his experiences. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're annoying. I've never read any of his work that was like atrocious, which was kind of what this was. I had a very bad time with most of the essays in this, which I'm not entirely certain were essays because a number of them read like fiction. I think they were fiction. Like, if it's satire and funny, like that makes it fiction, right? If it's not about his life, I don't know. I don't really know what this was. I don't know what genre it was. I don't know what he was trying to do or what people get out of it, but like the only essay in here that had any merit whatsoever was the Santaland Diaries, which is what he's like, I don't want to say what he's most well known for, but I think that was one of the things that like got him well known. That was like kind of mid, like kind of what I expect from David Sedaris, and everything else was just awful and painful. Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. I'm not getting rid of this because I don't enjoy it, although I read it in high school and didn't enjoy it. I'm getting rid of this because I accidentally wound up with 2 copies. I don't really know how, but I plan to reread it, give it like a fair shot, because like high school me reading this for class did not give Toni Morrison a fair shot. And I want to like appreciate her work, even like if I don't wind up enjoying the writing style, at least appreciate it for the context and like what Toni Morrison is doing. But like 15-year-old me, not in a place to care. 29-year-old me, probably. So I would like to give this a reread, just I didn't need 2 copies. Sweet Valley Confidential 10 Years Later by Francine Pascal. Not a fun time. The whole point of Sweet Valley for me was that it was fun drama, and I liked the soap opera-esque-ness of it. Words. This is set when they're 27 or something, late 20s. Elizabeth has moved to New York. Jessica is still in Sweet Valley with Elizabeth's ex-fiance. They're now living together, planning to get married. Not a fun time. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to get past the fact that Elizabeth's fiance cheated on her with Jessica, and now he and Jessica are living happily ever after. Like, I just know. And it just wasn't fun. It wasn't fun drama. It was just like everyone's cheating on their spouses, everyone's bitter and unhappy. Steven's gay now. Didn't really see that one coming, but I guess Francine Pascal realized that literally this entire cast of characters were straight. So, yeah, interesting. Glad I read it. Not really worth the read, though. Hello, Spleen Demon. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. I read it. Glad I read it. Sci-fi classic. Not my thing. I'm more into books for like the characters and the character development, and the character development in this is kind of non-existent. Like, we never know the dude's name. He's not really a character at all. He's just kind of like a vehicle from which to tell the story. There were a couple of moments in this I liked, but overall it was just like very much not my thing. Like, I get why people like it, I get why it's a classic. I feel like for the historical context, this book was a lot better, but like as a story itself, It just wasn't something I enjoyed, and it's not something I feel like I need to hold on to. The Snowman by Jo Nesbo is an adult thriller mystery thing about Harry Hole, who is an inspector in Sweden. I think it's Sweden. He's tracking a serial killer, but no one else believes there's a serial killer, so he has to find proof, and it's really sexist. Like, it's just, wow, the way it treated women was a little bit wild. Not entirely expected there, but I don't know, beyond that, Harry Hole was just a really bad inspector. Like, he just kept accusing anyone and everyone, and then when it eventually, like, panned out that that person wasn't guilty, he'd just go ahead and accuse someone else, and, like, I'm like, dude, like, you can't accuse literally every character in the book at some point, and then have me thinking that you're a great detective solving the case. Like, I can go around pointing fingers at everyone, and just waiting for the evidence to prove it wrong. Like, that doesn't... No, not fun. I don't know, I was expecting better from this, and it kind of disappointed me, because this was such a mediocre book. Mediocre bad. This was bad. This was kind of unpleasant. I have a full review on this that I'll link down below. I haven't been doing many reviews, but yeah, I'll link it. If there are any reviews for any of these books, I will link them. Wilderness of Ruin by Roseanne Montillo. This is true crime about the youngest serial killer in America, Jesse Pomeroy. In the late 1800s, like the 1870s, he was a child who killed other children or tortured them. Well, tortured and killed, depending on the child. Fun times. This book was so random. Like, there were entire chapters of this book about Herman Melville, like, author of Moby Dick, Herman Melville. I don't know what he had to do with Jesse Pomeroy. I don't know why he was included in this book. Like, it didn't make sense to me. Like, I tried to be open-minded and tried to be like, I'm sure there's a point to this here, but like, after reading the book, after thinking about the book, I don't know, like, there's nothing, I don't get the relation. And it was kind of like that a lot. It went on a lot of, like, tangential rants about things that weren't really relevant to the story at hand, and I don't know if she was trying to cover up for the fact that she didn't have that much information on Jesse Pomeroy, or if she was trying to write, like, an artistic, sweeping, like, cultural study that was, like, more than just Jesse Pomeroy. But either way, it didn't work. This was like a mess of a book that just needed a whole lot of editing to fix it. I have 2 Sherlock Holmes books, The Casebook of Sherlock Holmes and The Return of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. I'm not getting rid of these because I'm not going to read them. I'm getting rid of them because I have really lovely, complete Sherlock Holmes on my shelf that I don't need multiple copies. I have the lovely complete editions. Like, these are just kind of extraneous, and someone else will probably enjoy them. One that I haven't read, and won't be reading. We Were the Mulvaneys by Joyce Carol Oates. I read one of her books before, and I liked it okay. Like, it was one of those books where I don't know if it was good, but it was interesting, and I was kind of intrigued by her really weird writing style. Like, I wouldn't recommend it, but I was kind of down. And it was just like, the more I heard about Joyce Carol Oates, and the more I saw her on Twitter, just like trending every time she had a terrible hot take, the more I was like, I don't have any interest in reading this. And it wasn't like political stuff necessarily. I don't really know a lot of her political views, but I'm assuming they're not great. But it was just like a bunch of terrible hot takes intended to sow discord and get herself seen and get people talking. And like, I fully do not believe that she believes any of the things she posted on Twitter, because like, and I'm not talking about specific things, I just mean over the course of like several years I have seen this, and it's just annoying. She seems like an annoying individual, and I just don't care about reading this book anymore. Like, the book I read of hers, I think it was the Book of American Martyrs, was not good enough to justify how annoying I found her on Twitter. And I don't follow her on Twitter. I have contemplated blocking her on Twitter because I just see her tweets trending occasionally. And it's always some stupid hot take where she says something like just absurdly wrong. about science fiction or something. Like, it's just ridiculous. Are you okay? She's playing with her spring, so she's being loud over there. But I just don't have any interest in this or Joyce Carol Oates anymore. She's fine. If she sounds like she's dying over there, she's not. She's just playing with one of her little springs, and she just screams every time she does. I don't know why she does this. Spleen, you're being a menace. She gives me a heart attack every time she does it because I think she has, like, injured herself somehow. All Good People Here by Ashley Flowers. This is a thriller that I got for my birthday. It's about a woman who returns to a small town, and her childhood small town, I should say, to take care of her uncle who has early onset dementia, and there's a murder that reminds her of the murder of her best friend when she was 6, and she basically investigates the murder of her best friend when she was 6, like 25 years later. I don't know. It wasn't very good. It was trying to be the JonBenet Ramsey case, and it kind of just felt like Ashley Flowers had some theories about the JonBenet Ramsey case that she wanted to share, and I didn't really have any interest in those theories. And it was kind of just like every other element of the story. Oh, she gave me her spring. Every other element of the story was not well done. It was either like mediocre or actively bad. And it was just like, there was nothing that I enjoyed here. Like, I don't know. It's unfortunate, but I tend to unhaul thrillers a lot, which is why I don't buy them. But I like reading them. I like giving them chances, so this was a gift. I feel bad because it was a gift. Hello. Are you being a menace? I feel bad because it was a gift, but it's just like, I really didn't enjoy it. 2 Agatha Christie books, Murder on the Orient Express and By the Pricking of My Thumbs. I did a project reading Agatha Christie and I didn't really enjoy her. I'm keeping one of her books. These 2 I just did not have any interest in. Like, they weren't terrible. I gave them 3 stars, but it was just kind of like, okay, I've read them, now I don't need them anymore, which is sad because I love these editions. These are such cool, like, vintage editions. I don't think I really enjoy Agatha Christie. I just don't think she's for me, so goodbye. Between the Tides by Patti Callahan Henry. This was just a really boring adult fiction book about a woman whose father died and she's going back to her childhood small town. I'm really like a sucker for books where a person goes back to their childhood small town where trauma had happened in their childhood. But a little boy who's her neighbor had drowned, and she's kind of like revisiting the past and dealing with that trauma that she never dealt with. And it's supposed to be sad, but the main character was really self-absorbed and annoying, and like she was very much like making this trauma about her when really like she was like talking to the boy's mother, like the mother of this poor dead child, and she was acting like the biggest trauma of the summer was her leaving and moving away from the town. And I'm like, really? Like, you are in your 30s. If you're 12 having these thoughts, sure. Like, that made sense when she was a 12-year-old. She's not a 12-year-old anymore. She's middle-aged. Well, not middle-aged, but like she's in her 30s. Like, grow up. Grow up. It was annoying. Tempting Fate by Jane Green. One of my least favorite books of the year. This was unpleasant. This was about a woman who cheated on her husband because she felt old. And that's about as deep as this book gets, and about as emotional as this book gets. I have never read anything where the entire plot is about emotion. Like, I mean, because it's about her cheating on her husband and just the fallout from that. And no emotion. Like, it was so superficial. It was just like about like the very basics of everything that was happening. It felt like only the action was being described. Like, it was such a quick read, but like none of the characters had any complex feelings. Like, I still do not understand. I've talked about this several times. She desperately wanted a 3rd child. Her husband went and got a vasectomy without talking to her about it, and she cannot have that 3rd child. She cheats on him, gets pregnant with the other dude's baby, so she now is pregnant with her much wanted 3rd child. But she has to admit to her husband she cheated on him if she wants to keep it. There is so much going on here that could have been explored, and nothing was explored. Like, this could have been interesting, and it was so boring and so annoying. And I hated all of these people, but I don't think I was supposed to hate all these people. Like, I like unlikable characters. Like, they can make a really interesting story. But it has to be intentional. And I think these characters were meant to be liked. And I didn't. And it had a heartwarming ending that really did not fit the rest of the story. Like, absolutely atrocious. Like, I don't know what I was expecting from this, but, like, better than this. Better than what I got. Like, this was 1 star. Like, I give so few 1 stars, but, like, I really hated this. So don't read it. Or read it and tell me how much you also hate it, because I hated it. Also, it's described as a scarlet letter for the 21st century. Like, it's a wildly different book than the Scarlet Letter, which I also read this year and really enjoyed. More books from December. Keeper by Andrea Gillies. Doesn't have a dust jacket. This is a nonfiction book about a woman who's a caregiver for her mother-in-law who has Alzheimer's, and it's really sad, it's really dark, it's really just, like, dreary. It was fine. The further I get from this book, the more I enjoy it. Like, now that I have a little bit of space, I'm like, oh, like, this was, like, a very worthwhile thing to have read. I think I gave it 3 stars. Like, I would recommend it if you're interested in the topic. It's just, like, as someone who was kind of in a caregiving position to a woman with Alzheimer's, it was, like, a little bit too close to home and a little bit too similar to my experience that it was just, like, kind of unpleasant to read, but, like, really well done. So, I don't know. Like, not for me, but, like, a very good book, and I'm glad I read it. 7 Days of Us by Francesca Hornak. This is an adult contemporary about a family who's in quarantine. Not for COVID, this was like 2017. I got narc of this. Unpleasant. I think it was supposed to be funny. According to the description on the back, like, so many of the reviews were like, so hilariously funny. And I'm like, there's nothing funny in this. This was a sad book. Like, so many sad things happened, and it was annoying, and it was poorly written, and all the characters were, like, lacked development. Like, some of them were annoying and superficial, and some of them were supposed to have depth, and they were all just lacking in character development. I don't know. This gets bad reviews for, like, a good reason. Unpleasant. Not a fan. 2 more books that I read. The last 2 books that I read in December. This is basically a rehash of my December wrap-up. The Lemon Orchard by Luanne Rice, also doesn't have a dust jacket, about 2 parents who are grieving their children who have died. Well, one has died and one has gone missing, and they're both kind of grieving and have a romance, but, like, that's not really the point of the book. The point of the book is that this white lady comes in to help this poor Mexican immigrant dude, and, like, thank you, white people. So lovely of you. Unpleasant. Didn't like. Also terrible writing. The Somnambulist by Jonathan Barnes. Fantasy book set in the early 1900s. Kind of steampunky, kind of weird. Very weird. Very, like, basic story, but, like, so weird just for the sake of being weird. Like, not because it's interesting, but, like, I don't know. The weirdness had, like, no depth. There was, like, nothing interesting about it. There was nothing that was, like, purposeful about it. It was all just, like, weird for the sake of being weird, and it didn't actually develop any of the different elements. Like, there were so many different weird things that could have been developed to make it a more, like, complete, cohesive story, and they just weren't. I gave it 3 stars because it, like, intrigued me. I was always, like, curious about it. Like, this is just so weird, but, like, I don't think it was that good. And then I have the last stack of books. I'm trying to get through this fast because, like, otherwise this is boring because I have been talking about these books nonstop. From my try a chapter middle grade tag, I did the try a chapter tag on, like, some old middle grade and YA books that I didn't really remember, but I always kind of kept to decide if I wanted to keep them or not, and I kept some, and I have a big stack to unhaul, so I'll go through them real quick. Backwater by Joan Bauer is about a girl who is in a family of lawyers, and she doesn't want to be a lawyer. She wants to be a historian, I think. But it seemed a little bit too over the top for my taste just from the first chapter of reading. I know I've read it. I don't really remember it. There's probably a reason for that. I think I read all of these. The Castle in the Attic by Elizabeth Winthrop. First chapter seemed weird. First chapter just not to my taste. I'm pretty sure this is, like, a classic, but didn't really seem like my kind of thing. I don't remember even the first chapter that I read, but I remember just not being interested in it. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil Lee Frankweiler. Again, beloved book from the early 2000s, but I don't like children running away plots that are meant to be funny. It gives me like so much cringe and secondhand embarrassment, and I just wasn't interested in this. I don't know. It's just, if it's done in a serious way, I like a child running away plot. Like, it can be very interesting and well done. But when it's done to be funny, like, oh, look at this, like, immature child running away from their parents, like, no. I just find that unpleasant. I don't know why. There's no reason. Girl in the Hyacinth Blue by Susan Freeland. I just found this boring. I think this is historical fiction. But I read the first chapter and then I kind of flipped through it and there was just nothing that I really cared about. I just couldn't make myself care. I don't know. It's pretty though. It's a very pretty book. I might return that one to my parents because they might want that. The Pack by Elisa Carbone. This is a weird book. There's a new kid in class and he's like covered in scars and he says he's being like studied by the National Institute of Health. I don't know. I kind of read it and flipped through it, and I know I read this as a kid and it's signed to me. She says, "To Alexandra, keep on reading." Elisa Carbone, 2006. So I kept on reading. I feel bad it's signed to me, but I don't know. Hopefully someone else will find that and enjoy it because I think she's an indie author, or at least not a very well-known author. The Truth or Dare Trap by Nancy J. Hopper. It's about a group of kids who are doing a truth or dare game that like goes too far. I have no interest. The Galloping Detective Collision Course by Claire Birch. I didn't even get through the first chapter of this. This was so annoying to me. I don't know why. I was reading this and I was just so irritated. But I like middle grade detective books and I like middle grade horse books, so you think I would like this. But I was just like, I got through a couple of pages and just, no, like, I'm not reading this. Like, absolutely not. So, Hitler's Daughter by Jackie French. This is about an Australian girl who's telling a story that her grandmother told her about Hitler's secret daughter. I liked this a lot when I was a kid, but reading it as an adult, I was like, I don't need this book on my shelf. It just doesn't do much for me. Like, not in a bad way, but pass it along to so some other, like, 10-year-old can enjoy that. Shelter Me by Alex Macaulay. This is about a girl during the Blitz, the London Blitz, in World War II. Historical fiction. She has a bad relationship with her mother. Her aunt's super cool. I don't know. So she goes to a boarding school out in coastal Wales, and like the school's creepy. The headmistress is crazy. Yada yada stuff happens. I don't know. I was like almost interested in keeping it, but I know I read this, and it's like if I remember nothing about this book, there's probably a reason, and it wasn't really grabbing me. And my last two books are two middle grade ballet books, because I had a thing for middle grade ballet books. I don't know why I didn't do ballet. Well, I did like 1 year, but I didn't like ballet. But I like middle grade ballet books. So I have Please, Please, Please by Rachel Veo, which is one of the books in the Friendship Ring series, and No Way Ballet, A Twist of Fate by Suzanne Wine, which is the second book in the No Way Ballet series. Both of these were just like very juvenile, which I mean, like, they are, but like juvenile in a kind of like superficial way of like, if you're not a kid, there's not like enough heart and loveliness and cuteness for you, probably. It's just like, I don't know. I remember liking these both a lot when I was like 8, but like as a 29-year-old, not so much. So let me know down below if you've read any of these, what you thought of them if you have, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all again soon.